But first, our top story takes us up to the air where an investigation has found just under 5,000 pilots may have lied about their medical records during certifications. Flying Magazine's Jack Daleo joins us now to talk about it. Jack, welcome. What's going on here?
It's great to be back, guys. I'll give you a little bit of kind of the rundown of this story. So as you mentioned, the FAA is investigating close to 5,000 pilots who are suspected of submitting false information or omitting information on their medical records in their FAA examinations. That's a little under 1% of all U.S. pilots. So these are all former military members who are now civil pilots. Around 600 of them fly for passenger airlines like United, American, Delta. The rest are commercial, and they fly for cargo, charter, or tourism airlines. So far, the FAA has reviewed about half of these cases and grounded about 60 pilots while they review their records.
This is super fascinating because the way that this information came to light is pretty unique, right? We've got some of these pilots who are not only still flying, but then they're capitalizing on specific benefits from the Veterans Administration. That's kind of how people got clued in, saying, okay, if you're getting these benefits, that doesn't quite equate with you being 100% healthy to fly.
Yeah, this really began over at the Veterans Affairs Agency. Their probe began in 2019. They suspected pilots who may have been, lying to Veterans Affairs to maximize their benefits, but not disclosing those conditions to the FAA to maximize their flying time. So they began a probe. They cross-checked their disability benefits records with FAA medical records, and they uncovered around 4,800 pilots who were suspected of lying. They deferred those cases to the FAA in 2021, and then by the summer of 2022, the FAA began alerting some military pilots that they were under investigation.
And looking at the next steps, it can be difficult to find pilots. It's not like, it takes a lot of time, thousands of flight hours, thousands of dollars. And the military is one big pipeline for it. What does it look like now for the approximately 4,800 to 5,000 pilots? 60 of them have been judged, but what should I be thinking if I'm one of these being investigated? Will I be able to fly?
Well, so only about 60 of those half of those cases that have been cleared were grounded. The rest have actually been permitted to fly in full or with very, very minor restrictions. Really, all they were asked to do was correct their medical records just by filling out a form and taking another physical examination to get their medical certificate back. That's required by the FAA for almost all pilots except for those who fly light sport aircraft, gliders, and a few others. And then the rest of those pilots who their cases are still open, the vast majority of those have been permitted to continue flying as normal.
So, Jack, when we're talking about these issues some of these pilots are having, are we talking about like major medical problems like diabetes, where there's the potential of people maybe going into like a diabetic coma while they're flying and they can't fly with that? Or are we talking about little types of minor things that are, of course, health issues, but don't necessarily have a massive impact on a pilot's ability to do their job?
Right, that's a very important question. And the short answer is we really don't know. I would say, most of these issues are minor. Depression, anxiety are a few common ones. Now, these conditions are actually not considered disqualifying by the FAA. There's a list that they do consider disqualifying. Depression, anxiety, a few other minor ones are not. And pilots can actually fly with those as long as they are monitoring or they're being monitored and are reporting their condition. But the FAA, they only approve 4 medications. All of them are for depression that are considered to be safe for flying. The rest could be cause for denial.
And moving forward, will this have any impacts on those who are wishing to get their pilot's license? Let's say that I have some potential health problems and seeing this crackdown. Is there any challenges towards recruiting in the future or prior service members who are looking at this and saying, I may run into some issues. The VA is supposed to help me. Now they're colluding with the FAA almost.
It's certainly possible. And I know that there are a few veterans who feel that they've been singled out because the FAA, has access to their VA records. They might not have access to, the records of a lot of other pilots. So there's a possibility that the pipeline of military pilots to civilian pilots faces a little bit of turbulence, so to speak. But I would say that there's still there's still a pathway for those pilots to transition. What we do need to see though from the FAA is a revamping of this process, clarification of what's needed from these pilots, more intensive exams. A lot of them currently rely on self-reporting for some of these conditions that can be hard to detect, like PTSD. So there need to be some changes moving forward.
Absolutely, and that will only expand the pool of available pilots and hopefully help with the talent acquisition process as well. Jack, it's been great to have you back. Of course, we know that you are working for Flying Magazine now, still working on some of that drone coverage, still talking a little bit about some freight aspects with that as well. Can you give us an update on some of the stories you've been working on? I feel like we don't talk drones a whole lot anymore. Things have really kind of fallen off in that space, right?
Yeah, no, it's been a quiet couple of months for drones. I will say Wing, that's Google parent Alphabet's drone arm. They've been pretty active. They just partnered with Walmart to launch service in Dallas. Well, they already had service in Dallas, but they're expanding that now with Walmart. There have been a few smaller companies that got some key approvals, a couple of beyond visual line of sight approvals. That's a key permission from the FAA that allows companies to operate longer distance outside of the pilot's field of view that can really expand operations. So we've had a few examples of that. But yeah, I'm also covering a lot of electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. We're starting to see those pop up as kind of an aircraft that could be used for cargo applications. But yeah, it's been a little quiet in the drone space recently.
I had a curious question on this. I may have asked you this a few months ago. What's the current weight class, or what are they being used for in terms of if I have something that weighs X amount of pounds, when should I look at a drone? Because I'm assuming they're not just picking up 2,000-pound pallets at the moment.
That is correct. We're not quite there yet. There are a couple drones though that are capable of lifting 500, 600 pounds. There's a few models in development that are expected to lift closer to 1,000, maybe 2,000 pounds even. Some of the more ambitious ones. The vast majority of these, though, are last mile delivery drones. They're carrying food, they're carrying medical supplies like vaccines, blood samples, etc., on really small trips. These are maybe 5-10 pound payload.
It's interesting to see, Jack, and great to have you back on our airwaves. Of course, if people want to catch up with you now at Flying Magazine, where can they go to do that?
Yeah, it was great to be back, and you can catch me at the same Twitter handle at Jack Daleo. And you can check out my articles on flying. I'm the Modern Flying Geek reporter. So head on over to that section of the site if you want to see more.
Jack, appreciate your time as always. Looking forward to this. And when that 1,000-pound payload drone comes out, you're going to be the first one to come on the show and tell us about it, sir.
All right, we're going to hand things on over to Thomas Wasson. Thomas Wasson is standing right here. To Tony Mulvey and Donnie Gilbert. They're here with our first carrier update this morning.